County City Council for February 27, 2023 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mr. Kozowski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford,
Here.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
Mr. Prokowski,
Present.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Present.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to approval of the meeting minutes for February 13th, 2023. Are there any alterations or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro.
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Abstain.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, meeting minutes for February 13, 2023 are approved. We have an awards presentation this evening, and in chambers with us is our employee of the month, Josh Teppo. Would you like to come forward with your family, Josh? That's fine. Mrs. Hoover, if you'd like to read the certificate into the record, please.
Certificate of Achievement, Employee of the Month. Each month, Conneaut City Council honors and recognizes an employee of the City of Conneaut as the Employee of the Month. The Employee of the Month for February is Joshua Teppo. Josh was hired on July 21st, 2008 as an operator with the City of Conneaut Water Department and has served as the Assistant Superintendent since October of 2014. Josh has a Class 3 water supply certification and is certified as an analyst in the plant laboratory. Josh has excelled at all assignments during his tenure with the City Water Department. He is very diligent with his approach to work assignments and understands the importance of getting the job done right the first time. He is always there to lend a hand to coworkers with plant operations and technical issues that may occur. Josh has excellent leadership qualities and is an asset to the city. Presented by Mr. Moiseo and Mr. Prokowski on February 27th, 2023.
On behalf of City Council, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate everything you do. There's a certificate for you, Mr. Prokowski.
And this is a small token of our
Very
appreciation
good.
for
Thank
what you
so
do.
much.
Yes, so glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Want to introduce your family? Okay.
Daughter Madison, daughter Mara, son Lincoln, and wife Haley.
Welcome,
Oh,
guys.
it's nice to meet you guys.
Thanks
for coming.
Josh is also going to be
Congratulations, Josh.
our incoming superintendent
Yes.
for those in the recording. I know we introduced him before council, but he's going to be
Congratulations.
succeeding Mr. Neubauer.
Yes, congratulations, Josh.
Okay, moving on to citizen comments. Does anybody have any citizen comments? I did not follow procedure.
You can barely read that, but stay.
All right, David Thomas, your county auditor. Just here to say hello. Try to go out every 3 years or so and visit all the local government meetings. Was actually at the Conneaut School Board meeting last week to say hi, just see how things are going. And then also share with you all, as you may remember, every 3 years, our office, the auditor's office, is responsible for doing some type of property update with property values. So in 2020, we had our mass 2020 revaluation. Here in 2023, we are doing our state mandated triennial update. So why here telling this to you now? You guys are on the front lines in terms of talking to property owners, to residents, answering questions, and probably most importantly, when it comes to things like this, helping to direct folks to our office if they have questions or concerns as things start rolling out. process for our 2023 triennial update is pretty similar to our mass revaluation, a little bit different in the sense, though, that in the mass revaluation, our office goes out and looks at about 82,000 parcels. We put boots on the ground for every parcel. We look at it. During a triennial, it's purely based on the market. So the state will actually come out with a total percentage number in late spring or so of what sales have occurred and where the market's been moving over the past 3 years. And they'll tell us, Ashtabula County, you have to move your total property values from this amount to this amount. We don't really care where you do it in terms of neighborhoods or in terms of areas, but your total amount has to change based on this percentage, based on the sales that have occurred. So then what we'll do, we'll go neighborhood by neighborhood. There's about 205 or so neighborhoods that we have in our county. So for example, in Conneaut, north of Lake Road, in a certain section will be one neighborhood versus south of Lake Road. So we take into account certain areas, conditions of homes, what certain amenities are around homes. We try and make them as like as possible. And so then we'll look at where the market sales have occurred over the past 3 years in those neighborhoods, and then move the percentages for value changes based on what the market has done. And then the goal is to get to the same number or roughly the same number as the state, or we'll try and go back and forth to say, we really know our numbers or we've seen certain things. Here's really where we think we should move. Where this impacts you all and impacts, residents, obviously value changes can have an impact on property tax bills. Thankfully, it's not a direct correlation. We still see property transfers through our office that are double, if not triple, our current value. The market still is very strong here in Northeast Ohio, which is a good thing for property owners in terms of buying and selling. But when it comes to this process, it really is our job to try and refine down as well as possible what a property could sell for. And that's our goal is January 1st of 2023. What's the property value? So as your residents start to hear more and more coming out of our office, we'll send out postcards again this year in terms of what their new value is for January 1st of 2023, which is updated from their old value, which is based off of our January 1st of 2020 revaluation. And then we'll have an opportunity, plenty of time to hear. Obviously, we're not in people's homes. We don't know, certain conditions, for example. So we try and give as much time as possible to refine and get more information, property by property, if property owners are interested in sharing that with us. For you all, as a city, your revenue will stay relatively flat. Property values in terms of changes, what we actually will do is we'll put in something called reduction factors, and I could spend hours and hours talking to you guys about this if you want. We have some videos on my website, but we'll essentially do our best and with the state to reduce the actual tax rate so that your revenue stays relatively flat. When folks vote for most levies, they actually vote for a total amount that you all will relatively collect in. And then year over year, your tax rates will actually decrease to keep roughly that same revenue. New construction adds revenue, though. Other factors will add revenue. But for the most part, we actually will keep decreasing your tax rates. So that's why, thankfully, an increase in, let's say, 20% of your home's property value won't correlate to an increase in 20% of your property taxes. But tax conversation is kind of a side thing. Best thing for you all to know is to refer folks to our office if they have questions when they get their postcard or when they get their tax bill next year. Biggest misnomer out there, of course, is that we do this to raise revenue for local governments because local governments are strapped. Obviously, not the case. Every 3 years, it's a process to try and keep up values as accurate as possible. So wanted just to kind of come share that little tidbit with you guys that we're kind of in the middle of this process. We're hoping to have that first number from the state county-wide by late spring. We'll refine down, have essentially neighborhood by neighborhood changes by the midsummer, send out postcards, have plenty of time over the fall, and then that will be effective for next year's tax bill based off of this year's value on January 1st of 2023. So if you have any questions, feel free, reach out to me. Never hesitate to contact our office. We have a great relationship with John. He's an awesome fiscal officer, obviously. So we talk quite a bit and answer questions back and forth, but feel free, contact if residents have questions as they see more. You guys have definitely had a strong market, especially in comparison to 2020, especially then in comparison to 2017. So you look back at our past couple of revals, Conneaut's been really moving strong, which is great for the local economy, great for residents. And it's our responsibility to essentially catch up on property values.
So Dave, so I understand this correctly. more than likely, based on home sales, everything increasing, that means individual property owners, property taxes more than likely are going to increase.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
So
that's-
it's not a direct correlation.
Okay,
But I mean, frankly, there's been most counties this year, the average increase the state has shared in terms of property value side is right around 25 to 30% increase. Now that does not mean a 25 to 30% increase in taxes, but due to another fun thing called inside millage and other factors largely around school funding, your value will increase and your taxes will increase together, or your value could decrease and your taxes would decrease together based on inside millage. There's a small portion of your tax bill that's actually directly related to your value change, but that's not your entire tax bill. So for example, 10 mils out of 65 or 70 mils is directly related. But your vast majority is not. But if your property value goes up, more than likely, unless, for example, levies drop off, this past year, Children's Services decreased one of their levies by 1.5 mils. So a vast majority of the county actually saw a property tax decrease. It was small, but a property tax decrease because some entities will actually decrease or completely remove levies. So there's a lot of factors in place depending on, you know, what new levies are added, for example. So we really try and find the right and correct value for the date that we're looking at, and then the tax rates will come after.
but the revenue for the municipalities, school districts, you know, what's divided up in the property would stay flat.
So school districts are a little bit different because there's something called a 20 mil floor, which is essentially guaranteed they're going to collect in 20 mils of the area. So they will move up and down a little bit more, but yeah, your cities, your townships, your villages, the county, we stay relatively flat. And that's kind of the goal of property taxes, is to keep things very stable when values go way down or when values go way up, everything stays flat.
Makes sense.
Yeah. If there's any other questions I can help answer, or
Two quick questions. One, how do you determine these boundaries for neighborhoods? And two, will you be doing the entire city or are you just randomly picking certain neighborhoods?
yeah, so answer your second one first. So we do the entire county, even though we're not looking
Talking
physically.
about the city.
Yep. But every single property in the county gets updated. So in the city of Conneaut, same thing. Every single property will get updated or changed. We won't look, one-on-one on each property like we do in a mass revaluation. But here in the city of Conneaut, yes, every property will at least have some type of change up or down, depending on what sales have happened in those neighborhoods. And in the neighborhoods, we try and keep small, but realizing with 82,000 parcels, try and have kind of a blend. So there's typically about 250 or so homes per neighborhood. Now that is typically going to be certain blocks together. For example, one side of a railroad track versus another, where homes are relatively homogeneous, relatively the same, same year built, for example, same rough condition. And then we look at each of those properties and say, what's the average property? What's the average square foot? What's the average age, condition? And then there are some that are going to be above average, and then some that will be below average. And then we'll take a look and compare what's the per square foot rate going for in terms of the market. The ones that are above average, that'll be a little bit more per square foot. Ones below average, a little bit less.
So you do all this pretty much on paper, though.
Correct.
Okay. So
So-
you're not out here like,
Nope.
okay.
No, in the full revaluation. So in 2026, we'll hit every single parcel. And we'll look physically. We'll see if there was a burned down garage. We'll see if conditions changed. But for the in-between update year, essentially, we just look at statistics and data.
Okay.
But we welcome if folks, for example, you tear down a garage, we should know about it. Because that is, I don't want to be taxing anyone on something that's no longer there. Or if you have a house fire, we typically try and track those in the paper and we'll change value right then. But any change in condition is good for us to know because that's a change in your market status.
Okay.
Any questions? Yeah, feel free, reach out. Like I said, just here to listen and say hi as well, and travel around. Just was at the school board recently too.
Are you doing anything with waterfront properties? I know coastal erosion's been a major issue.
Yeah.
How
So-
was the guidance on that?
So 3 major focuses on that. One, in 2020, I actually went out in a boat and looked the entire coastline. just to see. We took some pictures of different changes. So to actually have that, again, the idea of during a full evaluation, you actually see what you're taxing. This year, we probably won't go out in the boat, but what we do have are a good number of aerials to show what changes have happened in terms of erosion over the years. So we'll be able to actually track some of the differences, and we'll look parcel by parcel lakefront property of what land changes have actually occurred. Now, there's the third aspect of that is, while there's less land possibly on some properties, their neighbor, for example, or right down the street, similar properties have sold for tremendously more than what even is worth much more, because the market has actually fetched much more for it. So lakefront properties are always ones that we hone in very specifically on, because not only is the market quite unique for lakefront properties, but just the status in terms of loss of land or gaining land or types of homes changes as well. So those are ones that we really do focus. We could be, having a value for lakefront and all of a sudden they're out of date, just like with Roaming Shores as well. Very unique area. We'll try and capture as close as possible, but those are areas where the market moves tremendously, one way or the other. But yeah, erosion, we will decrease, the full rate, for example, for land values. We'll set certain percentages to try and capture how much land they've lost, but their per acre value could actually be much higher based on the sales that happened.
The other question we get a lot in my office is there's quite a few properties in Conneaut that ostensibly pay no property taxes. Can you explain how somebody pays zero property taxes without any kind of incentive or anything like that, where it's just a valuation based zero tax situation?
So the most common one is when folks in the mobile home or folks that have a value below, which actually is a chunk here in Conneaut, below 25,000, and they're on the homestead. So that's the most common one. Homestead reduces your property value by 25,000. The other one would probably be property values that are tremendously low, probably in the 15s to 20s. We saw that much more pre-2020 reval. What happened here largely in Conneaut too, we had a good number of homes in the probably the 20 to 30,000 range that then all of a sudden we had to bump based on sales in the 2020 reval to 35, 40, or 55. Now we're seeing those moving to probably 60, 65. But feel free to send those our way if you do see ones that are tremendously low in terms of the actual taxable amount. But your taxes paid on something that's $15,000 or $20,000 is going to be much, much different, just based on how that rate's applied to the same value. So you have the same tax rate, and that's what we would typically look at, is what's the tax rate and then where's the value. But typically, folks that have homestead and are in a mobile home, 99% do not pay property taxes because it actually decreases the value that we apply the tax rate to. Or if you're a disabled veteran, it's $50,000. So we actually have a decent number of those too in the range where their value is much lower too.
Just one other quick question, excuse me. Let's say along the lakefront, we have homes north of 500,000, we have some north of $1 million. Those sales, how would that affect the overall property values for the city of Conneaut? Those are some big sales, and there's a few of those out there.
So that's where the beautiful thing of the neighborhoods come in. So we would essentially say the home that sold for over $1 million, which happens
Right.
here, is not going to impact what we have in terms of our values or our averages of homes that are, right next to your city hall, for example. So we'll look neighborhood by neighborhood and those changes that occur, the market sales. What the state does though, the state does look at all the sales that happen and they put them all together. They'll push out some of the extremes. So that's where our office will essentially argue back with the state and say, yes, if you took it, the entire amount of it could be 30%, but actually if you look neighborhood by neighborhood in terms of where things have actually moved, it's much more like, 25, or frankly, could actually be higher than the state. It's how the numbers and how the market's played out. But it wouldn't impact areas outside of essentially that kind of neighborhood or
That
zone.
area,
Yep.
that zone, yeah.
So since we're talking lakefront again, how do you define lakefront?
So there's, and I'm no appraiser, But there's an old appraiser, I guess, statement or kind of comment to that, that there's, you can see the lakefront, you can touch the lakefront, or you can smell the lakefront. So those are three different kind of classifications for how we would look at, are you right by the lake? Can you see the lake? Or can you smell or hear the lake?
That's interesting.
So it's philosophical versus in actual practice of, where are the homes located? Where's the road located? And then how can we try and fit with not overfitting or underfitting number of homes in there? So we typically would say right by the lake, that's going to be your highest factor. Put yourself in the, perspective of a buyer, where if you're wanting to be by the lake, you're going to start to look at how much are you willing to pay for just that lake, land or land with home. And then you're going to slowly kind of lower your interest in terms of amount you're going to pay based on how far away you are from the lake. And that's where the erosion aspect and everything kind of gets interesting, because some folks don't really care. We talk to people all the time that have said, I didn't think it would be this bad, or I didn't think this area would be bad, for example, but they've helped to set the market. And then when they go to sell, the market's set again based on where the new buyer comes in. So there's one aspect of buyer beware in a sense, but also when you have so many sales and so many things happening, we can actually take that data and say, where are things really moving in the whole market?
So based on that theory of the three factors, somebody living a block south of Lake Road would be considered lakefront.
No. So that would be considered essentially you're close enough to the lake. So you're going to be probably, and we'd have to look at where sales have occurred, but you're going to be probably in a more desirable area if you're just south of Lake Road versus if you're 3 or 4 blocks in from Lake Road. And that's where we'll do the neighborhoods to say that's kind of a different market area or market interest, right north of Lake Road, right south of Lake Road, or 3 or 4 blocks in. And then the sales will back us up, either correct or incorrect, and then we would readjust. So if we had roughly the same home right north of Lake Road, right south of Lake Road, and 3 or 4 blocks down, what would actually the market say? We're not going to have the same home.
So you're saying if you're 1 block south of Lake Road, yes, you're going to be affected for lakefront property,
You'll be in a different kind of area.
but you're still affected with lakefront property 1 block south of Lake Road. But if you're 3 blocks south of Lake Road, it'll be a different perspective.
Right, possibly.
So
yeah.
there's,
So be
it's-
factors.
Desirability.
I got that.
Yeah, put yourself in the buyer. And if you want the lake, you're gonna pay more. You're gonna
Sure.
pay more closer to the lake. So
Right.
it's nice that we have data. There are some areas in the county, some townships where there may have been 1 or 2 sales all year.
Now, are you using all aerial to assess the property throughout the city?
Mhm.
So not
So-
just the lakefront, but the whole city?
Correct. We fly flights every 3 years. Actually, starting probably in a year, we'll be flying flights every year, just to be able to better gauge changes and see where things move, especially north of 90. So we can use that as another tool to say, if a property owner came in and said, you've been taxing me for this house that's no longer there, we can look back in our aerials and see exactly when it was no longer there, for example. So that's just one extra tool. I prefer though to be able to see the property and have someone actually look at it, but you're running almost $1 million when you do that. So that's every 6-year process. So like I said, feel free, reach out if you have questions as things go on, or if people talk to you and have concerns or questions, more than happy to help answer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any citizen comments? Communications. Okay, we all received that one communication, which you can just read on your own because it was dealing with the executive matters, so. Okay. Move on to reports of administration, beginning with City Manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. Very briefly, we had a meeting with ODOT Transportation Improvement District that included Greg Myers, who's our Transportation Improvement District Chair, as well as Christina Wagner-Shepsey with ODOT. We did submit for the first round of reimbursement on that, and we got to clean up a couple things and submit for some additional rounds. We'll be discussing that more with council coming up. We did have a Board of Health meeting this past week. Nichelle wanted to get together with us. Our resident sanitarian looks like will be ultimately leaving us here. So we are going to be back in the situation where we're looking for a new sanitarian. So Nichelle actually sent me the job posting today. Livy is going to be going up to the county Board of Health. She took a job of a vacancy up there. So we're going to be back on the hunt for that. So that's something I'm going to have Nichelle kind of brief counsel on and what that might impact in terms of some of the septic tank inspections that we were going to get it back up and running this summer. So I can have Mr. Brian Bidwell as well as Nichelle run through that with you here in the near future. We've continued to have a series of pre-construction meetings with the equipment mobilizing the site this week, which is kind of exciting. And we're jumping through some hoops here with the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers before they can really start moving some dirt around. We are looking to do kind of a briefing with council before that gets underway, as well as possibly a public meeting here in March, just to kind of tell people what's going on and why do we see trucks going by, that kind of thing. Just to answer any questions that might be out there. Josh Teppo, obviously, I've already introduced Mr. Teppo to council. Really excited to have him on board. It's really nice to be able to promote from within the organization. It's good to have competent people continue to rise to those most senior levels. It also gives an opportunity for some younger operators to step into those assistant positions, learn positions within the lab. It is becoming more and more difficult. A Class 3 water supply license. That is a difficult license these days. It takes many years of contact with the facility to actually achieve that. So it's tests plus years of contact. So it takes about 7 or 8 years to get to that level of licensure. So that's a big deal. We, in fact, only had one outside candidate that even had that level of licensure apply. So that gives you an idea of how rare that licensure is becoming these days. So just once again, emphasize, internal development opportunities for younger staff. We're going to have to grow our own folks, and that goes with anybody in public works or wastewater, drinking water. So really happy to have Josh and happy for his future. So Conneaut Creek dredge material facility, like I said, we're going to have some deeper discussions on that at the work session. And then I do want to see when we can bring in for kind of maybe a deep dive meeting. I don't know whether we want to do that under a utilities committee meeting. The request for proposals, or I'm sorry, request for qualifications, on the dredge facility operator that council approved at the last meeting that has been published, that's out there. I haven't received any yet, but they still have a couple weeks yet to respond. So that too will be coming back to council in the near term. The Buffalo Street boring project, there's a letter attached here from CT. I'd like to address that more thoroughly when we get to the ordinance, considering that doesn't matter to me, but I think it'd be more pertinent when council's considering that for award. 2024 paving, I did send an email out to council with a kind of generic spreadsheet with kind of what I'll call the leftovers from prior year paving projects. If there is a street that you would like us to work up, and by that I mean measure, define, and we also check it for water and sewer suitability for any kind of resurfacing. So, as you know, I'll use one example. We've talked about Buffalo Street up by Jackson in the past, and kind of the explanation that we have to give residents there is that needs a whole complete street reconstruction, including the 100-year-old water line and the 100-year-old stormwater lines and the 100-year-old sewer lines. And that's a far more extensive project than the mill and fill paving that we typically do with this project money. So if council has any streets that they would like us to look at and bring to the work session this coming Monday, just email me a street name from here to here. We'll get it measured. I'll have Skip Ensman and Mr. Bidwell go evaluate them for sewer and water suitability. And then we can kind of have a more productive discussion this coming Monday with council. kind of get to our top grouping so we can get that published out and get that out to bid as well this spring.
You give us a list of the streets that were sent to us.
Yeah,
Itself.
yes, it's in the Excel sheet went out late last week. If you need me to resend it, or if you have any others, it's literally the Excel spreadsheet you got last year, and we took the ones off of it that we completed, so it's kind of
We
a.
just, I don't know how anyone else feels. You want a copy? Can we get a copy of it?
Yeah, I can reprint it, sure, absolutely. Absolutely, not a problem. Jumping around, the water treatment plant, we've been a little slowed down by the availability of parts. The only pieces that remain is the SCADA, which is supervisory control and data acquisition pieces from ProTech. That is the sub-consultant that's designing that. They are waiting on some final parts. They have told us they anticipate being completed by the end of March. So it's drug on and on some parts availability, but we're being told that they have everything and they're ready to get the final install completed. So fingers crossed, we're done with this one in March and we can stop looking at it on my monthly updates. And then jump down. The planning and zoning land bank demos, we did receive final reimbursement a week or two ago on that. The one thing I am waiting on, 518 Madison Street, this is a fire damaged structure. We did talk with the Community Planning and Services Office. They were in the midst of completing all their final demos. They were under the impression that it was possible they were going to end up with some remnant dollars left over from those demos. If they have excess funds, we've kind of told them we'd very much appreciate any assistance we can get, and the city will pick up the balance of this tab. So on 518 Madison Street, we did go ahead and solicit some quotations on this, and it's right in that range that you expect, between $8,000 and $11,000 neighborhood. We also received some extensive quotations on the Route. UIC brought their engineer out. We're trying to look at if there's a more design build solution to this project and problem. We're going to cover that in some depth on Monday night's work session. So I did send that out and include that in my email last week, if you got a chance to review that. If not, we will discuss it at length at our next meeting. That's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
I have one, the 1200 block of Lake Road, that damage there on Lake Road. What's the update on that?
I would have to ask Mr. DeBell. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, it seems like it's getting closer and closer to the roadway.
Okay. Oh, you're talking about the culvert? That's, yes.
1200.
So I know they were out there last week. It is on their impending schedule for that. The guardrail is still usable. We'll be able to relift that. There's a head wall at the bottom of the hill where I think it's just run off from the top of the hill that has gone around the head wall and pulled some material with it. So our temporary plan is to buy some casing blocks, cement blocks, pile them up on the either side of that, back in, fill it back up, and bring the shoulder back up and reset the guardrail. The issue that we were having is there was a little bit of internal debate as to whether or not our excavator could do it in-house or not. And the short answer is no. We do not have the reach if we build a platform partially down the hill to reach it. So Joe was soliciting some external quotes on that for the excavator work only. So I'm hoping to have that, but we've talked about getting that done here and having that done by the end of March.
Yeah. Any other questions for the city manager? Okay, thank you. You want to the finance director, Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. The first thing I wanted to address is ordinance 1023. The elimination of the cemetery perpetual trust fund. I know this has been on the agenda for a few weeks now. I gave you a copy of the Ohio compliance supplement, which addresses sections 5705 and 06 of the revised code, and 14 and 16. And basically what this does is it identifies the transfer of funds to another fund. The problem with this one is it does not fit in any of the exceptions. So if you look at it, the only one that kind of comes close is the unexpended balance in any special fund. The problem with this, it's not considered a special fund in this sense. So what we're gonna have to do, and I put an asterisk on it on page 27. Per revised code 5705, 15 and 16. In addition to the transfers listed above, the taxing authority of any political subdivision with the approval of the tax commissioner may transfer from one fund to another fund, and then they give the exceptions. Bottom line, we're gonna have to apply to the state for the tax commissioner, and I have the form to do it. It's 570516. I'll fill this form out. You can apply online. I don't know how soon we'll get a response from the Ohio Tax Commissioner, but as soon as I get one. Now, if they approve it, then we can go ahead and eliminate the fund, but we probably want to eliminate the fee first. Because there's $100 of a sale of every lot that is being remitted to this fund. So council would first have to eliminate that fee. Once it's eliminated, then we could go ahead and transfer the funds to the cemetery fund, which is a special revenue fund. If they say no, and I talked to Mr. Hockaday about this earlier today, if they say no, that we can't transfer those funds because it does include some trust bequests prior to this fund being created. So there's some of that money commingled with the revenue that we've generated over the years. If that's the case, what we would do is council would create a spent in the cemetery department. So say you wanted to purchase mowers, we would purchase it directly out of this fund, and we would use this fund as if it were the cemetery fund. So you could do that until you deplete those funds. And then at that time, once it hits zero, then we can go ahead and eliminate the fund. So we'll do it that way. If that's okay with council. The other thing, we did get some updated numbers for workers' comp. If you look at the group retrospective rating analysis, we do a 4-year look back. So from 2017 to 2020, total payments were about 97,000. I included just a few years ago, the total payments were 452,000. So those payments have gone down substantially over the past few years. If you look at the projected experience rating, we had modified losses of about 109,000 and limited of about 105. So there's only about a 4% difference there. And our credibility rating went down a little bit, which is good, from 33 to 31%. And modified loss is really the key in the experience modifier. It's 1.01. A few years ago, it was 1.25. So anything above 1 is penalty rated. Anything below 1 is not penalty rated, that you're actually getting a discount. We're in between. So we're not penalty rated, but we're not getting the benefit ratio either. So, but we've improved substantially over the past few years. So the maximum amount of value per claim is 87,500. So no matter if we get a claim for 200,000, the maximum that they can charge us is 87,500 for whatever claim that is. The manual rate projections, the expected losses are about 124,000. As I said, the limited are about 105. If you look at the premium rate projections, we're looking at a standard premium of about 70,000. An individual premium with the assessments is about 89,000. And if you're looking at the group retrospective rating, which the city is part of, we have a target of 42%. So that is the target refund that we're looking at. So with an estimated standard premium of about 66,000, a target of 42%, we're looking at a program refund of about 27,000 for next year. And then I did the net premium, and then there's the estimated maximum assessment, which is 15%. So that's about the maximum assessment would be about 9,900. And then I gave you the premium refund range. So the maximum refund we could receive would be 41,000. The maximum penalty on that is about 9,900. We're looking somewhere in the middle of about 27,000. So if you look at that graph, We're about the third one down from the left. So, and then you can also look at this same analysis for 2019. And you can see we had more in our claim cost summary. We had from 2012 to 2017, but it was substantially worse. So, you know, these things kind of ebb and flow. They're like health insurance. Sometimes you get years with large claims. Sometimes you get years with hardly any. For lost time claims in 2020, we had 0. But if you look at that next page, you know, we had some large ones, like in 2016, we had some large lost claims for 2013, 2014. So, you know, right now we're in a pretty good spot. And our workers' comp premium for 2019 was 188,000. If you look at that in the middle of that page, we were 114,000 this year. So we're over 70,000 less than what we were several years ago. And the rates are getting even better because next year, if you looked at the one page for 2019, we were at 3.6% of payroll. This year, we were 2.23. Our projection for next year is 1.86. So our premium for 2024, based upon 2023, is going to be about 106,000. So that's pretty good for the city. I've seen it over 220 and 30,000 in the past. So things are looking pretty good. Now, we did have a lost time claim this past year. It was a pretty severe workers' comp injury. That will not affect us for another 2 years because there's always that 4-year look back. So that
So if we have any claims this year, that won't affect.
it won't affect us for next year. It won't affect us until probably the following year, or the year after that, depending on where it fell. But, and that's all I have at this time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So John, on the estimated refunds, are there stipulations on what you can do with those monies when they're refunded back?
No,
If I recall.
basically, each fund that pays their proportionate share
Go
will
to the,
receive that money back in that same proportion, or that same ratio.
okay.
Any other questions for the finance director? Okay, thank you. And move on to reports of committees. Anybody have a committee report? Okay, hearing none, liaison reports.
I have one this evening, Mr. Arcaro. There, on February 23rd, there was a cable advisory board meeting. I just wanted to talk about the main gist of the meeting was talking about a new app that Great Wave is rolling out. The rollout date is looking at March. I don't know if they'll have it all the way ready, but the app is actually, you can see it if you go to any app store. And it's going to be for their Great Wave TV. And this will allow anybody that is already a user of Great Wave cable to be able to access shows on any device. So on their phone, on their iPad or anything. And they're rolling this out. And this is what they're going into to be more current. What we talked about is because of Cable Advisory Board, how that's going to affect the program for our local entities. And it's still going to be, excuse me, on Channel 6. So you'll be able to see the local TV shows that they record and follow up for us will be on Channel 6. Now, the one thing that this is going to affect is going to be the Sunrise Live with Jim Coco. It is going to be on Channel 1, but it will not be on any other entity. Like, so say you have Spectrum, you'll still be able to access on channel, whatever channel that is for local access for our cab on Channel 6 for cab. But Great Wave has decided that the Sunrise Live is only going to be for Great Wave customers. So it's their property. You're only going to be able to see it there. So that is going to be kind of a change. So I wanted to make that announcement and look forward to getting more information in the mail about, the app. Anybody have a question about
Are his
that?
shows still gonna be on the public access like Vimeo platform?
No,
No?
no. No. Now, we don't know when that change is going to take place. But because it's a proprietary thing, they're saying that Sunrise Live show is there and it can only be viewed on their TV app, their Great Wave app.
Yeah.
So, and the programming that we do now for CAB, usually you'll have Sunrise Live on and then the other programs will start at 10 and we all get notifications about what that schedule on Channel 6 anymore. So whether or not CAB decides to plug in something else or start their programming schedule earlier, we'll see. We don't know. They haven't decided yet. So this is all rather new. It is public information and but it's for Great Wave customers only.
So if I have a Roku or a Fire Stick, I'll be able to access the app.
Yep. Which is great.
Or
I
keep
mean,
my old wired cable,
y-
my TV.
yeah. I mean, they've done, they've done all this upgrading
Still have?
of fiber optics and stuff, so, but this is a new step for them. Anything else? Anybody else have any?
So you're
other-
saying I'm gonna have to go to the app at some point?
If I can just say
I
one
think you-
comment about that.
Yes.
They are beta testing right now, which I'm a part of, and it does work quite well. So there's hundreds of channels, but the difference is it's not cable, it's through the internet.
Yeah.
So it's all streaming
Streaming.
and they have
yes.
their own, like she says, their own app, which you would download and guides there, everything. It works quite well.
But it's also full fiber optic, correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
Direct to the house.
Yes,
yes,
no cable.
right. Cut the cord. Sorry, Terry.
It'll be okay.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, everything's gonna be okay.
I have Great Wave now. I have Great Wave now. I like the cable. I like the cable going in my TV. I don't know why. I just do because I love that.
It'll be okay,
Okay.
Terry. I promise you. I promise you. Okay, that's all I have. The only other thing I wanted to mention was the Board of Tourism did not have a meeting in February. So I'll have a report in March for them. And let me know, Mr. Hockaday, if you want to cover that information at a utilities meeting, we can go ahead and
Okay.
schedule that, okay?
Okay, that's great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else for a liaison report? Okay, I do have a liaison report from the Port Authority. I attended their meeting on the 16th. And I'll just go over some of the highlights. Basically, there's been no drastic changes in lake level. The skating rink was well used when the weather cooperated, that is. And it is going to be removed the weekend of March 4th. And they did get a little storage building, so it'll be stored on site there. And where the rink was will be converted back to pickleball for the summer. That's Dean Avenue Park. Naylor Boulevard will be opened early, weather permitting again. Oasis has received 192 contracts so far. Had 24 non-renewals, but had 10 new. So they're basically down 10 contracts and have they're rated at 60% full at this time in the marinas. They're negotiating the sale of the fuel dock right now. The parking lot at project at Park and Day is on hold at this point. The EPA is arguing over two slightly elevated samples in where the new marina is going. So now they have to resample. So that project is delayed again. Oasis also introduced their capital improvement plan, 5-year capital improvement plan to improve amenities. And they will beginning by improving security and infrastructure in the port this year, and then grow as they go if they continue to be the stakeholder down there. So that's all from the Port Authority. Okay, if there's no other liaison reports, we'll move on to our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. And we will begin with our second reading ordinances, which we have 9 that are in second reading, beginning with ordinance 1023.
An ordinance to eliminate Fund 789 Cemetery Perpetual Trust as it is no longer necessary and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, you heard Mr. Williams talk about that earlier, and at this time I would entertain a motion to table this ordinance.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro, to table ordinance 1023 as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1023 has been tabled. Move on to ordinance 1123.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to enter into a supply implementation and support contract with Civica North America, Inc. for financial software use and maintenance for a period of 3 years and declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Williams.
I believe I went over this quite extensively at our last meeting. If you'd like me to explain it again, but basically what we're doing is we need to upgrade our software. It will no longer be supported after July of 2023. We are currently with Civica CMI for all of our applications, including finance, payroll, income tax, capital assets, and utility billing. Finance and the purchase order rec have already been upgraded to Authority. I looked at different companies. None of the companies provide all of those applications that we need. So we would have to kind of parse it out. We would have to buy in, a couple pieces here, a couple pieces here. And then it would be hard to interface, I believe, with the CMI software. It's also more expensive. So I think this will make the easiest transition. It's going to require some additional training, but we're all familiar with the CMI program. And I think it's going to be a much cheaper and much easier way to transition to an upgraded software.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 11-23.
Motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 1123. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Hey, Mrs. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
At this time, I'd like to declare ordinance 11-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 1123 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Ms. Ledford, emergency's been declared.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 11-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 1123. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1123 is passed. Move on to ordinance 1223.
An ordinance to authorize payment to the following vendor in the amount listed in section 1 below pursuant to section 570541.
Williams again.
As you know, if a purchase order is not obtained or an encumbrance is obtained prior to the incurrence of the liability, and it's over $3,000, council has to approve it. This was for salt. I believe it was an emergency. At the Public Works Department, they needed the salt, so they went ahead and ordered it. Prior to obtaining a purchase order for $10,623.70. So council has to authorize that purchase.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to declare or to waive the 3 reading rule for ordinance 12-23.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 1223. Is there a second?
Second,
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski, 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Like to make a motion to declare ordinance 12-23 an emergency.
It's a motion to declare ordinance 1223 an emergency. Is there a second?
No second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
And Mr. Prokowski, emergency has been declared.
Like to make a motion to act on ordinance 12-23.
It's a motion to act on ordinance 1223. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes,
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1223 is passed. Move on to ordinance 1323.
An ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of Conneaut, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Okay. Those of you that were here heard Mr. Lewis's explanation last night. It's just a housekeeping thing for those of you that weren't here.
thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro, to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 13-23.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 1323. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes,
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to declare ordinance 13-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 1323 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo, the emergency has been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 13-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 1323. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes,
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1323 is passed. Move on to ordinance 1423.
An ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to accept the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC, 2023 Energized Community Grant and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
So all the NOPEC NEC grants are kind of a 2-stage process. Council has to accept the grant and then we can propose the project. So this is the first stage in which council acknowledges the grant and accepts it. We can define the exact parameters of it. It's approximately $28,000. It's very similar to what we've had in years past. I think right now we have about with the acceptance of this will be about $90,000. We have some street lighting things that we are looking to upgrade or put these towards. We do need to respond within a time frame to NOPEC, therefore the declaration of emergency.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Okay, just one thing. So with this 28 added, you said it's now around 90. Are we going to start?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to tilt towards the Madison Street project in which we're going to add some street lighting there. And then obviously on Broad Street, when we do the underpass piece, there's a lot of city-owned street lighting that will be replaced in that project as well. That would allow us to upgrade to LEDs as well as some other things that will help us with both of those projects, as well as just offset some general project costs.
So we'll be talking about that at a future work session.
Yes, yeah, yep.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 14-23.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 1423. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ledford, the three reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to declare ordinance 14-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 1423 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
And Ms. Ledford, emergency's been declared.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 14-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 1423. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1423 is passed. Move on to ordinance 1523.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to enter into a property lease with Huntington Public Capital Corporation for the financing of a Case Motor Grader and D-Site SLG 108 VFRB3 screener in the amount of $255,000, $255,660.38, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
We've previously discussed these on several occasions. One is the replacement of the Public Works Department's road grader. We have identified a model that has already been manufactured. They've been holding for us. And then also a screener to allow us to reutilize some of the road grindings we've been able to stockpile over the last several years at the city's industrial park. That'll allow us to redeploy some of those materials to other roads in the future. So I think these are both good and adequate purchases by the Public Works Department. We're purchasing this utilizing our line of credit with Huntington. They've been patient with us. We were hoping to approve this at the last meeting, so we've been able to convince everybody we're still buying everything. So hopefully we can take action on this tonight. I don't know that we'll be able to extend either of these beyond this meeting into March if council would choose to do that.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to waive the three reading rule on ordinance 15-23.
There's a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 1523. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Prokowski, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to declare ordinance 15-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 1523 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Prokowski, the emergency's been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 15-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 1523. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1523 is passed. Move on to ordinance 1623.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to apply for and if awarded, accept and enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Conneaut, a solid waste district community grant, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
This grant is due in early March. We can discuss it a little more at work session. But this is the solid waste district. It's a maximum of $13,000 for the city of Conneaut with some matching funds required. I know one of the things that we've done in the past is we moved our recycling bins over to the industrial park. The city has shouldered the personnel cost to put the attendant there throughout the winter. And I think we're looking to do some upgrades to the winter situation for that attendant who is required to be present that entire time. On the upside, since moving it from Clark Street to the industrial park site, we haven't, and having an attendant present, we have not had the dumping or contamination issues that we've had in the past. So, but we'll have a work session on Monday, but it is due before our next regular council meeting. So if council could authorize our grant application, I'll give you that final and we can discuss it at our work session.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance?
Do you want to, is this recommendation to declare an emergency?
Yes. Yeah, because it'll be due before. our
Because of
next
the due
regular-
date.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Is there a motion to proceed?
Mr. Arcaro, make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 1623.
Motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 1623. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to declare ordinance 16-23 an emergency.
So motion to declare ordinance 1623 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo, emergency's been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 1623.
Motion to act on ordinance 1623. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1623 is passed. Move on to resolution 1723.
A resolution to approve a new application for placement of farmland in an agricultural district made by a landowner within the city of Conneaut as more fully described below and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, as you know, we have to have a public hearing for this, which has been scheduled for or after our work session on the 6th. So this will be moved to a third reading. Move on to ordinance 1823.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to advertise for requests for qualifications for facility operations manager at the Conneaut Creek Dredge Reclamation Facility and declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Hockaday.
So this is for the operator of the facility, not for the construction. So this goes on an RFQ basis, which means we say we're looking for the following process to be fulfilled, and any interested parties would submit a statement of qualifications. Once we receive those, we will score those according to the criteria in the RFQ, and then we'll come back and present that to council. Before we can move forward with anything, we would then need council's approval and then negotiate a final agreement. And then that too would also need to be approved by council. So council we'll touch this multiple times moving forward. This is simply the advertisement of that document, the RFQ, so we can solicit the SOQs from interested vendors.
Okay, any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 18-23.
There's a motion to suspend a three reading rule on ordinance 1823. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ledford, the three reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to declare ordinance 18-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 1823 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Ledford, the emergency's been declared.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 18-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 1823. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1823 is passed. And that completes our ordinances in second reading. Give Mrs. Hoover a breath break.
Do you need a drink of water?
Yeah, got it.
Are you good? Okay.
And we will move
I
into
know
our,
she wants to say Mrs. Moiseo, but that's
I just
okay. That's
Don't know
okay.
what's happening.
I think it's kind of funny.
It's happened before.
Just- yeah.
It's okay.
okay, we'll move into our first reading ordinances and resolutions, and we have 6 to consider. And we will begin with ordinance 1923.
An ordinance to authorize the payment to the following vendors in the amounts listed in section 1 below pursuant to section 570541 D1 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Williams.
Okay, similar to ordinance 1223, this is basically the same thing. We had, I believe in water distribution, there was some maintenance that was needed for the backhoe. And the wastewater, or the water distribution manager did not expect it to cost $5,487.74. So the purchase order was obtained for substantially less than that. When they got the bill, it was obviously over the 3,000, so council has to approve that. And then the Schindler Elevator Corp., I think the same thing. The yearly preventive maintenance.
It's an auto renewing contract, so it renews on January 1. So by the time they send us the final amount, it was just over. So like the salt, it was a January 1 issue where that's when the bill hit. So we're seeing some of these January 1 billings hit us. We even if we could have asked for a PO, our books are still closed. We're still doing end of year by January 1. We don't have our books open, so we couldn't have attained a PO even if we were in a position to do so. But this is our annual maintenance contract on our elevator that we require for maintenance and certification of our elevator.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 19-23.
The motion is to suspend a 3 read rule on ordinance 1923. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moisia?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes. Mr. Prokowski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to declare ordinance 19-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 1923 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
And Mr. Prokowski, the emergency's been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 19-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 1923. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1923 is passed. Move on to ordinance 2023.
An ordinance to amend the 2023 budget through appropriations and fund and interfund transfers attached hereto and marked Exhibit A.
Mr. Williams.
This is our first quarter budget amendment. The first one is pertains to the general fund. The CCDB had some additional collections they wanted reappropriated into this year's budget for $11,097.65. I sent an email out regarding this other project, the Buffalo Street Sanitary Sewer Project. We have a grant for $198,000. The bid was for $269,000. The additional match will have to come out of the sewer department. So we're appropriating $72,000 in equipment and capital improvement. In the water fund, a couple severance pay line items had to be adjusted for a couple staff that are going to retire this year. And then for the ambulance fund, equipment capital improvement, Chief Lee had requested an additional $5,000 for water rescue equipment out of the ambulance fund. Grand total is $148,987.65 for all of the adjustments.
Okay, regarding the ambulance one, is that part of that fundraising for the water rescue?
Yes.
I think it's part of the match for that fundraising.
Okay.
I had appropriated 5,000 in just capital equipment because I didn't know if they were going to use any this year. And then he said he needed an additional 5. And it's for the match for that.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, do we know what the CCVB wants to do with the appropriations of the bed tax collections? We have an
I
idea.
don't, I know it's in their special projects. They have some things that they want to do. I don't know specifically what it's for other than special projects within that fund.
We approved their budget. We
Yes.
previously approved their budget.
I'm trying to recall. I know they talked about some options.
I believe they're still working on the script sign down in the.
I was
harbor.
thinking signage,
Yes.
but I didn't.
I want to move this second, but I don't want to move it to second. I would like to have some input. What is, is it for signage? What is it for? But I don't want to affect these other lines. So I don't know if,
So
But-
these also would have been unanticipated collections from last year. So bed tax came in very strong for them
excess
last year. So
collections
Right.
from
they
last-
did
They
collect.
get this. I mean, this is their.
They do get this,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
overage.
Yes.
So
Yes.
whatever their projects they have going, signage, whatever the case may be,
Yes.
they would get this any.
You don't know what fourth quarter collections will be until January usually. So in January, we know what the collections were, so they had over collected of the estimate by 11,000. And they just wanted it reappropriated into potential projects.
I think just me personally, I think the point is, and I agree with all that, is that, we see it in an email a day before or an hour or two before the meeting and, now reach out. Well, if you reach out before that, I think that would be better. That's all I'm
They
saying.
actually had a meeting with me prior to this, but I did not receive the email.
Okay,
And then so I had contacted Dolly Sherman this morning and I said, hey, is there any way you can, send an email with a explanation? And that's why you received it today.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions or comments regarding this ordinance?
Mr. Arcaro, I'm sorry.
Okay, is there motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 20-23.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Like to make a motion to act on ordinance 20-23, or I'm sorry, 20-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2023 is passed. Move on to ordinance 2123.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into a commodities agreement with French's Concrete for the purchase of LSM and concrete and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
Okay, I'm gonna discuss at once 21, 23, and 22 and 23. So these were commodities bids that were let in the fall. And I know that for the first time in my tenure, my advice to council was to reject them and rebid them. Those 3 specific items have been hit by substantial inflationary impacts in the fall of last year. And my hope is that by waiting a little bit and getting a little closer to the 2023 season, maybe some of that inflationary bet hedging that was going on would calm down. And it did some on all 3 of these items. So it is lower than what we were quoted in November. Maybe, $10 a ton. It's not huge, but they are all in the correct direction, that they were less than we were quoted in the fall. So that is both for concrete and LSM. LSM stands for low strength mortar. Frequently we use that to backfill roadways that we need to get up and running, and we can't use gravel or let it compact, particularly on high traffic roadways. And the other is for cold mix, which is a type of asphalt that's only used in the wintertime below freezing. It's still pliable at cold temperatures. And then obviously your variety of hot mix asphalt. Asphalt plants won't open until middle April to even early May. But in all 3 cases, the prices did go down over what they quoted. So they're an emergency because we are in the 2023 season and we are beginning to start utilizing some of these products for this season, particularly the concrete and the cold mix are something we're going to be in the active process of purchasing here. So I'd like to get these awarded and completed so we can start acquiring some of these products under the commodities bid. So I know that was a little unusual. We've never rejected a commodities bid before, but inflation was pretty extraordinary at the end of last year.
Any questions or comments regarding actually 21, 22, and 23? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 21-23.
There's a motion to suspend a three reading rule on ordinance 2123. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Abstain.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Hey, Ms. Ledford, the three reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to declare ordinance 21-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 2123 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Abstain.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Ledford, the emergency's been declared.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 21-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 2123. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Abstain.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2123 is passed. Move on to ordinance 2223.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into a commodities agreement with Highway LLC for the purchase of cold mix and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 22-23.
Motion to suspend a three reading rule on ordinance 2223. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Prokowski, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to declare ordinance 22-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 2223 an emergency. Is there a second?
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Prokowski, the emergency's been declared.
I'd like to act on ordinance 22-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 2223. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2223 is passed. Move on to ordinance 2323.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into a commodities agreement with Kokosing Materials, Inc. for the purchase of various materials as listed in section 1 below and declaring an emergency.
Okay, is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 23-23.
There's a motion to suspend a three reading rule on ordinance 2323. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
And Ms. Ledford, the three reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to declare ordinance 23-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 2323 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Hey, Ms. Ledford, the emergency's been declared.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 23-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 2323. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Hey, ordinance 2323 is passed. Move on to ordinance 2423.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into contract with SET Inc. for the Buffalo Street Sanitary Sewer Project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
Okay, I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on this one. So there's a summary from CT Consultants and review of your bids for this project. We received two bids. The original opinion of probable cost of construction was $245,000. We received a bid of $259,275 and another bid from SET of $269,472.63. The low bidder for this improvement is International Excavating Ohio from Canfield. The bidder did not submit bid forms BF5 and insurance affidavit or BF6. Surety agent supplemental bond form acknowledging the correction of the warranty period. Records showed that their license was filed pretty recently, their state license in June 29th, 2021. The bidder initially submitted 3 projects for their experience record form BF4, but did provide an additional 3 projects upon request. We have no experience with this bidder or their proposed boring subcontractor, but did do background checks and references that they provided. The second bidder was SET out of Louisville. We reviewed their bid forms and they were complete and were responsive. Records show their state license was filed in October 4th of 1988. Their experience record submitted with bid forms shows 88 projects. CT has records of clients awarding 19 contracts to this bidder between 2012 and 2021. One project in Lordstown had a bore under a railroad, which I oversaw from Chris Kigelnick here, and was completed on time without incident. At this juncture, we're recommending to council that we utilize SET for this project. This is on Buffalo Street in the approximate area of the Conneaut Public Library. It is a sanitary sewer line that is going to be required to be directionally bored underneath the NS Railway. It is both a sensitive project and a complex project. I think CT is indicating to you where they see the experience lying in this project, as well as the completeness of the bid form itself. So the primary bidder of International Excavating was missing certain documentation from their bid and is seen as incomplete. So it is their recommendation, along with my recommendation, that the project be awarded to SET.
Any comments or questions regarding this ordinance?
With the difference of the probable construction cost and the high bid would be the difference.
So the opinion of cost was 245. International's bid was 259,000 and SET's was 269,000, approximately a $10,000 difference between the two. All bidders came in over the estimated opinion of probable cost. However, they are within 10% of the opinion of probable cost and therefore still awardable.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 24-23.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 24-23. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes. Okay, Mrs. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to declare ordinance 24-23 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 24-23 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Hey, Mrs. Ledford, the emergency's been declared.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 24-23.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 24-23. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 24-23 is passed. And that concludes all of our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. Move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, move on to miscellaneous business. Have one, Chuck. Mr. Hockaday, the road cut northbound and Broad at Russell Street. It's starting to break up and collapse right there. So I know with the weather doesn't, isn't favorable to repairing it, but as soon as feasible, if that can be taken care of.
So we've looked at that. Mr. Bidwell is aware of it. That was originally a sewer issue. So they're going to remove some of that low strength mortar from around there, make sure everything's still set level and in good shape. And I think we're going to pour a concrete section in there some of that is due to the fact that we have an upcoming construction project that's going to make heavy use of Broad Street. And it's been my encouragement to Mr. Bidwell, who is well aware, as also the dredge superintendent, that we're going to be rolling trucks over that and that we need to get it fixed. I don't think we have the opportunity to wait to May to get that done. So we will probably do it in concrete before the asphalt plants open. We'll still have the opportunity at the end of that project to come back and put it back in asphalt so it all matches. But I think we just want to get it squared up before it's a hazard. There's also an issue at 14th Street in the intersection there under the traffic signal where there seems to be some deformity in a manhole. We're going to look at that at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's 15.
15th, sorry.
I see you got the new bulletin board in.
I'm sorry.
That's the new bulletin board you have.
It got here this afternoon, so the box is still hasn't made it out to the dumpster yet, but it will be done.
Okay, very good.
Anybody else? Yeah, I just have one thing. I would like to send kudos out to the county EMA on the new Smart 911 app. For those of you that aren't aware, the county upgraded. EMA upgraded our old app, which is the app that the city uses to notify our residents. This new app, Smart 911, is very effective and very inclusive as far as all the information that the resident wants to put in and share with county police and fire. It's very, very extensive. So I've already done it and I would encourage everybody to do that. Again, it's smart911.com.
Mr. Carr, I have one thing too. I'd like to thank the police department, FOP Lodge 51. They had a reverse raffle Saturday evening, very well attended, very nice raffle. And they did an excellent job with that. And I'd like everybody involved, I would like to thank them for doing that for the community.
Anybody else? Okay, nothing else? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Hey, City Council for February